I stood in the kitchen of the original Sweet Harmony bakery, the one my husband Tom and I had opened 30 years ago in downtown Willow Creek. The air still carried that familiar mix of vanilla, browned butter, and yeast, a scent that had comforted me through his illness and the quiet years after his death. My hands gripped the marble countertop, knuckles white, as I stared at the thick manila envelope my daughter Emily had just placed there. 2 days earlier, she had married Ryan Caldwell in the garden behind our flagship store, surrounded by peonies and the soft clink of champagne glasses. She'd been radiant in her grandmother's lace gown. Ryan, with his easy smile and tailored navy suit, had seemed like the perfect match for my bright, trusting girl. He owned a small chain of upscale coffee shops in the city and talked endlessly about synergy and family legacy. Now, here they were, back from their mini honeymoon at the coast, sitting at my kitchen table like it was any other Sunday morning. Ryan's arm rested casually along the back of Emily's chair. He slid the envelope toward me with that same polished smile. "It's nothing alarming, Claire," he said smoothly. "Just some forward-thinking paperwork. A family asset alignment agreement. With the bakeries doing so well, we thought it would make sense to formalize everything, protect everyone, especially when kids come along." Emily beamed up at him, then at me. "Mom, Ryan's amazing with business structure. He says combining resources now avoids headaches later. It's basically a trust framework." I didn't touch the envelope. My stomach had already twisted into knots. Inside, I knew, would be pages asking me to disclose full ownership details of Sweet Harmony Bakery Holdings, the private company I'd quietly formed after Tom's death. The company that now owned 12 locations across 3 states, a central commissary kitchen, and commercial real estate worth just over $9 million. No one knew the full scope. Not even Emily. When Tom passed 5 years ago, the will had appeared modest on the surface. The original bakery, our house, some savings. But he'd spent his final months restructuring everything into a blind holding company, shielding it from taxes and prying eyes. I'd honored his caution. I'd never flaunted wealth. I drove the same 10-year-old SUV, wore aprons until they frayed, and paid my staff better than anyone else in town. Emily assumed the business was comfortable, not extraordinary. Until Ryan started asking questions. It began innocently enough. During wedding planning, he'd toured the flagship store and remarked how quaint it was that we still did everything in-house. Then he'd casually asked about expansion plans, franchise interest, valuation. When I deflected, he'd smiled and said, "Just thinking like a son-in-law." Now, this envelope. I forced a calm smile. "I'll have my attorney look it over." Ryan's eyes flickered just a fraction, but I caught it. "Of course. No rush. We're family now." Emily squeezed his hand. "See? Mom's always careful. It's why the bakeries have lasted so long." They left 20 minutes later, promising to return for dinner later in the week. The moment their car pulled away, I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The document was 30 pages of legal jargon. But the intent was clear. I was to transfer majority voting shares of Sweet Harmony Holdings into a new family trust, with Ryan and Emily as co-trustees. My name appeared as grantor, but control shifted immediately. There was even a clause allowing the trust to borrow against bakery assets for marital ventures. I felt the blood drain from my face. He didn't just want in. He wanted control. That night, I barely slept. I walked through the dark house, past framed photos of Tom kneading dough with toddler Emily on his shoulders, past the original handwritten recipe book locked in the study safe. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to refuse outright. I was going to test him. I called Margaret Liu, my attorney and oldest friend. She'd helped Tom set up the holding company years ago. "They're moving fast," I told her. "Too fast." Margaret listened without interrupting, then said, "You want to bait him?" "Yes. I want him to show his hand." She exhaled slowly. "Dangerous, Claire. But doable. We create a parallel set of books, legitimate-looking, but misleading. Show the company carrying heavy debt, expansion loans, declining margins. Make it look like your one bad season from insolvency. And make it accessible, I added. Just carelessly enough that someone snooping could find it. Margaret paused. You're sure? I've dealt with opportunists before. Tom's cousin tried to contest the will. I learned. By the end of the week, Margaret delivered a flash drive and a printed ledger. The numbers were artfully grim: $2 million in outstanding loans against the properties, rising ingredient costs, a pending health department fine from a fabricated inspection. Net worth barely $800,000 with negative cash flow. I left the ledger on the desk in the bakery office next to an open laptop logged into a dummy accounting portal. Then I waited. Nothing happened for days. Emily texted photos from their new apartment in the city. Ryan had insisted on moving closer to his coffee shops. She sounded happy. I replied with heart emojis and invitations to Sunday dinner she kept postponing. 10 days after the envelope, Ryan called. Claire! Emily's craving your lemon raspberry cake. Mind if we swing by the bakery tomorrow? I've got a potential investor who'd love to see the original location. My pulse quickened. Of course. Come at noon. I'll have everything ready. I knew what this was. He wanted another look around. And access to the office. They arrived right on time. Emily hugged me tightly, smelling like vanilla and new marriage joy. Ryan shook my hand with both of his, eyes warm. The investor was a slick man in his 40s named Victor Lang, who asked pointed questions about foot traffic, supplier contracts, and real estate ownership. I gave vague, proud mama answers while watching Ryan. He excused himself to use the restroom twice. Each time he passed the office. When they finally left, Emily promising to visit soon without Ryan next time, I checked the office. The ledger was slightly askew. The laptop screen had timed out, but the browser history showed the dummy portal had been accessed. He'd bitten. That night, Margaret called. We got a hit. Someone downloaded the full financial package from the portal at 1:17 p.m. IP address traces to a coffee shop Wi-Fi Ryan's flagship location. I closed my eyes. He thinks we're drowning. Next move? She asked. Let him try to save us. I waited another week. Then I casually mentioned to Emily during a phone call that I was meeting with the bank about refinancing. I sighed heavily, let her hear the worry. She told Ryan, of course. 3 days later, he texted me directly, first time ever. Hey, Claire! Emily mentioned you're stressed about the loans. I've got experience restructuring debt. Happy to help, no strings. Family, right? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. That would be a lifesaver. Can we meet? We arranged lunch at the garden cafe next to the flagship bakery. I arrived early, Margaret already seated discreetly at a corner table with a clear view. Ryan showed up in a crisp linen shirt, carrying a leather folio. He kissed my cheek like a dutiful son. Over salads, he laid it out. I took the liberty of running some numbers based on what Emily shared over the months. He slid a folder across. You're over-leveraged. But there's a way out. Inside were proposals. He would inject capital from his investor group in exchange for 49% equity. The bakeries would rebrand under a joint umbrella, Harmony and Caldwell Patisserie Collective. He'd handle operations, modernize, franchise. I'd keep majority shares on paper. But the fine print gave his group veto power on all major decisions. And a clause allowing buyout at fair market value if certain profit thresholds weren't met within 3 years. He smiled gently. This saves the legacy, Claire. For Emily. For your future grandchildren. I pretended to study the pages, letting my hands tremble just enough. It's a lot. Take your time. But the banks won't wait forever. I nodded slowly. I'll have Margaret review it. His smile tightened. Of course. That night, Emily called in tears. Mom, Ryan says, you're hesitant. He's trying to help. Why won't you trust him? I let the silence stretch. I do trust him, I said finally. That's why I'm being careful. She hung up frustrated. 2 days later, the real move came. Margaret called at 7 a.m. Someone filed articles of amendment with the state, trying to add Ryan as an officer of Sweet Harmony Holdings. Signature looks forged yours. My blood ran cold. He used the downloaded docs to fake a board resolution. Exactly. It'll get rejected, we caught it early, but he's getting desperate. I stared out at the sunrise over the bakery garden. Then we end this. Margaret and I spent the next 48 hours preparing. We gathered everything, the IP logs from the dummy portal, the forged filing, screenshots of Ryan's texts offering help, and most damning, a recording. During the calf lunch, Margaret's associate had been filming discreetly from the corner table. Audio captured Ryan saying, "Once we control the real estate, we flip the flagship property for $3 million alone. The old lady won't even notice until it's done." He'd thought no one could hear. Now we had him. I invited Emily to the house alone. No, Ryan. She arrived wary, eyes red from crying. Mom, if this is another lecture. It's not. Just watch something with me. I played the recording on the living room TV. Her face drained of color as Ryan's voice filled the room, casual and cruel. Old lady won't even notice. She covered her mouth. There's more, I said gently. I showed her the forged filing, the downloaded files traced to his computer. She sat very still for a long time. Finally, she whispered, he told me you were paranoid. That you hated him because he wasn't Dad. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I should have listened. You loved him. That's not a crime. She started crying then, deep, wrenching sobs. I held her like I had when she was small and fell off her bike. When she quieted, she asked, "What do we do?" We give him a choice. We arranged the meeting at Margaret's office, neutral, professional, recorded. Ryan arrived confident, carrying yet another folder. He faltered when he saw Emily sitting beside me, eyes swollen but steady. Margaret laid out the evidence in neat stacks. The forged filing, the IP trail, the audio. His face went from confusion to fury to fear in seconds. This is entrapment, he hissed. No, Margaret said calmly. It's documentation of attempted fraud and forgery. Emily spoke for the first time. You used me. Ryan reached for her hand. She pulled away. Baby, they're twisting. Stop. Her voice cracked but held. Just stop. Margaret slid a document across. Annulment papers. You sign away all claims to Sweet Harmony, to any shared assets, to Emily. You return the engagement ring purchased on her credit card, and you leave quietly. Or, he sneered, or this goes to the district attorney, and the local paper, and every hospitality investor group in the state. He stared at the papers, then at Emily. She met his gaze without flinching. He picked up the pen. His hand shook as he signed. When it was done, he stood abruptly. You'll regret this, he muttered. No, Emily said quietly. I already did. But not anymore. He left without looking back. The door clicked shut. Emily turned to me, tears fresh on her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mom. I pulled her close. I'm sorry you got hurt. We sat like that for a long time. A month later, the annulment was final. Emily moved back home temporarily. She spent mornings in the original bakery with me, learning the books, the real ones. She cried when I showed her the true valuation. $9 million? She whispered. All this time? Your father wanted to protect it. And you. She nodded, wiping flour from her hands. I want to earn my place here. Not because I'm your daughter. Because I love it. I smiled. You already have a place. We expanded slowly, carefully. Opened a 13th location in the city on our terms. Emily designed the menu, brought in new recipes, but kept the heart of Sweet Harmony intact. One evening, as we closed up the flagship store together, she paused at the door. Mom? Yes, sweetheart? Thank you. for seeing him clearly when I couldn't. I locked the door and turned off the lights. I'll always see clearly when it comes to you. We walked to the car under strings of calf lights, the scent of fresh bread lingering in the cool night air. The legacy was safe, and so was my daughter.